Yeah, well, sweet. Let's get into it. I appreciate you heaps for doing this with me, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's probably good for me to do because I think definitely in the future I'll be on a lot more sort of podcasts and people asking stuff about my story of my life. It's definitely interesting and colourful in a lot of ways. I've done a lot. I feel like I've lived 10 lifetimes already for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked that I get to do the first one, man, and I'm super excited to hear all about it as well. But usually when I do it, I always like to start right from the start of your life, so I can see like the trajectory of your life that's you've gone on. So tell us about your childhood and what you did growing up.
Yeah, so my childhood, I was lucky enough. My parents built a house on acreage when I was 6. So they basically got a piece of land when I was 6. I'm now 37. Built a really nice house, and they've still got that now, and they're still together. So I had a pretty secure, like grounded childhood. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
with basically having like that nest. You know what I mean? I always call it like the nest, like that grounding. Um, and then growing up on acreage, we backed onto like near a creek. So
yeah,
I could go like fishing and crabbing and like hanging out down there and riding my bikes and just like having that sort of outdoor adventurous lifestyle. And then my dad was pretty outdoorsy, so he was like right into mountain climbing, fishing, which that's where leading will lead into that, but that's where a lot of my adventurous outdoor sort of always looking to go and do something crazy, you know what I mean? And to get off the beaten track, that's where that comes from. But yeah, so I grew up in the same place, and then I went to a school like not far from where the house was. I went to only 2 schools, so again, the
whereabouts is
secure.
this in Queensland?
This is in Brisbane, yeah. So this is on the
Yeah,
bay side of Brisbane, near the water.
yeah,
Um, and I went to basically the same primary school and the same high school. So I was able to build relationships with people over a long period of time. So some of my friends I've known for 20 or 30 years, even though I'm only pretty young still.
yeah,
And I think as we lead into that, that's where a lot of attributes come from my life of that stability, security, deep connection with people has come um, from not having to move around too much. We did move to Mount Isa for a couple of years, which was an interesting experience, but I was pretty young. I was only like 6 and 7, so we
it's in the
lived
middle of
up there.
nowhere, isn't it? Is that
Yeah,
is that
it's
is
it's up.
that in Victoria?
No, Mount Isa's north, man. It's way up north and inland,
Oh,
so it's a mining place. So we moved up
that-
there for a little while, but again, being young, it was pretty adventurous. I was outdoors, running around, riding bikes, throwing rocks, doing all that sort of stuff.
it's a different child. It's a different way of kids to growing up now. It's just straight on the phone now, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing, bro, is the internet, for me, didn't come out until I was 15.
Yeah,
So I was 15 before phones even were a thing, and it was like a big giant brick, you know what I mean? Um,
you're the best of both worlds, really.
so I say that a lot. The 80s babies have the best because we got to grow up real and we got to grow up with the virtual as well. So we can do things as a real human and be out of the matrix, but then we were tapped in enough to know the matrix.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool, man. I'm sort of in that. I was born early '90s, so I still definitely grew up going outside, riding my skateboard and my push bike around, doing all that stuff. Um, and then yeah, it wasn't until high school until the phones came out and all that. So I still got all primary school, and and I'm really grateful for that because even just watching like family members now and stuff like that, they pretty much soon as they don't want to give their kid all the attention, they pretty much just go here, have the iPad or
For
do this
sure.
instead of they're nowhere near as creative these days. They didn't have to make up their own games in their head and doing all that jazz. It's just straight to give the kid the endorphins on the laptop.
And I think a lot of that comes down to that's, you know, what is acceptable now. But I also believe the parents are under a lot more pressure now than our parents were. Like, obviously, our parents had still the same financial burden and things like that. But, you know, cost of living wasn't, even though they were earning a lot less, it wasn't as stressful. So they definitely had the same problems as the parents having now. But I think parents themselves have so much distraction from the phone as well that their attention span is so like short, so it's just easy when the kid plays up and they're just trying to get attention to just give them that hit, you know. But it's sad because it's setting them up for the same, you know, the next generation is in for a world of hurt, you know, because they've got no backbone, they've got no spine, they've got no grit, they've got no resilience, and they're going to have it the hardest because majority of their jobs are gone, like especially those basic jobs that you start in when you first start working, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be completely up to us to teach our kids that.
100%, and that comes down to you know, men being awake and like kind of like the work that we're doing, you know. Forgot we didn't meet at a retreat, but you know, that's sort of like how we met, going to these things and just trying to be better men, so that when
Yeah.
we do this next phase of our life, that we're going to be good fathers and be good examples and you know, and put them on the right course. But obviously, there's a big chunk of society that isn't like that, you know.
Yeah. Did you just do another one recently? I seen you posting some photos, or is that like from
So
one that you did a while ago?
that's the one I did probably like 2 months ago, maybe now. They're about to do another one on the 21st, which is sick, up in the back of the Gold Coast this time. That one was in Byron. So they've just sort of released some photos. So I've just been sharing some of them. And I got so much out of that one and just connected with some very high level men,
Yeah.
young men
Was
and
that the
older men.
Yeah, was that the one that you were telling me about?
Yeah, with the Mexican sweat lodge. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that sounds crazy. I would have absolutely loved to go to this one. Are you going to the one in January?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of similar to what I already done, but I've noticed a lot of the boys I connected with, they're re-entering it again. They're going to hit it
Yeah,
again. So I'm 100% going. I'm probably going to stretch the hand out to certain people that I think could benefit, slash, you know, that are high value and ready to, you know, connect with some really awesome men. Because I've been to a lot of those things, and I've never been to one that had so many already high level men that had done incredible things. Like, you listen to 20 something guys' stories from the age of 21 to mid 40s, and I was just like, holy fuck, there's some badass dudes in this room, you know what I mean, with business and
yeah.
life.
Would you recommend anybody to do something like that?
I believe it depends where you're at in your life and what you're trying to achieve. It definitely, you don't need to be a business owner or someone that, you know, is high level. You can be just someone that wants to connect with men that are like that and get some inspiration and get some direction. So definitely, it would be open to anyone that's open to be challenged mentally, physically, and just understand that as a pack, we're stronger, you know, and we move as a
Yeah.
group.
So
So
what's this particular thing called?
I think the Instagram page is called Activated Man, I think it's called, or something like that. Not sure what the event, if the name they've got it, but they do it through an invite only system. It's not advertised really publicly, so it's kind of it attracts the right people. And like how this one again, there's a lot of guys like myself that have already done it. We're gonna go pay again and do it again, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's every time you do these things, it's just about trying to every woman and man should be always trying to better themselves and go to these things and learn and grow. Um, because if you're not looking for something new, we're only taught what we're taught from our parents, and then we become adults, and then you're only taught what you taught from your friend circle, and then you either stagnate at that, and people just like slip into that sort of job, mortgage, wife, kids, and they don't do any work, and then the process repeats itself, right? And then I do these things because I'm always trying to better myself and surround myself with epic humans, you know, that are on the path and on the journey to look into life a little bit different, you know.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, but I think you really got to be sort of on that path to be doing that, because I've sort of done other similar things like that, but I went in with like the wrong intention, and I didn't really get anything out of it, you know what I mean? So, and now that I'm sort of doing this now and I've got the intention of something like that, I'm getting so much out of it. And like I said, how even we met the first time, we just put ourselves out there and went to this brotherhood thing, and just after that one conversation, I've got another person to do a podcast with, and I'm totally interested in your life.
For sure. For sure. And but that comes down to that stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Like you said, even that morning, and that you weren't even going to come because your mate didn't come, but you still did it, right? You turned up on your own, didn't know anyone. And that's that ability to kind of be a little bit of an extrovert, to just put yourself out there, you know, and put yourself in an opportunity that, like when we met, you know, I always say that if you put yourself in certain situations like that, it's not like going out nightclubbing where you're not going to meet that many great people out clubbing, right? It's like most people are out there doing drugs, drinking, trying to escape their life instead of dealing with it. Where we go to these group events and it's like, 5:55 a.m. they set the time because they know that if you got to have commitment to get up on a Saturday and be at the beach at 5:55 a.m. to like hit
especially
that
on that day.
On that day, man, you know what I mean? So it kind of, these things attract the people. Like I always say, it's like the container of life, and it rattles people into those spots where majority of them I want to connect with. Same with the retreats, right? You know, that one we went to in Byron, and they're doing it again. It's like 12 hours, man. It's like from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. It's like a 12-hour event. You don't know anybody. You don't sort of know what you're walking into. But again, it's like it rattles society and puts the 1%ers, I call them, right in front of you. And then it's like the best place to connect, because nearly everyone there you're going to connect with, because you're like, man, you're an interesting human. Like, your story is cool. What are you doing? And then it's like, then we connect, and it's like, I mean, you connected, and we're now doing this podcast, and we moved together as brothers on opportunity, then with investing, talking about relationships, talking about family, talking about bettering ourselves for our future, and we move as a group, you know, and we can all lean on each other when needed.
Yeah, absolutely. The power of it is just absolutely crazy. All it takes is one step into it as well. Literally,
For sure. And
it's
a
not
lot of
like
it.
you need to dive head first. Like, it's literally just take that one step into trying something new and putting yourself out there, and that's all. It's shown me that's all it really takes.
100%.
But I would like to still back it up a little bit, and go back to maybe a bit after your childhood, like what happened after you left school? Did you finish school?
Yeah. So if we wind back even to primary school for me, high school, I was a little shit. I was like, I was a real little shit. You know what I mean? I was just a naughty kid. Well, they classed me as naughty. Like I've sort of evaluated that a lot more as I got older. I was always a leader, you know. I was always like the leader of the pack. I was the funny kid, always sat at the back of the class. I didn't pay attention. It wasn't that I had learning difficulties, like they tried to say that, you know what I mean? But as I got older, I realized that was just because I wasn't interested in what they were teaching, and lucky enough, I was onto that at a young age, because a lot of the information was useless. It's programmed from the government to kind of teach us to be another working ant to the system.
Yeah.
Um,
Into the matrix.
into the matrix, you know. And lucky enough, I was born different, you know, and I got onto that early. But the way I expressed that was from being the popular kid and being a little shit and being aggressive. And I've always had some aggression problem. I've never found why, because I come from a good family. My parents are still together, but I always wanted to fight and prove myself, and yeah, that's something I'm still on a journey to work out. I'm not sure where that comes from, but so primary school, and then went into high school, and again, like, had a lot of problems there with getting suspended many times. Like, you're supposed to get expelled from school if like four times you're supposed to get suspended, and then you get like kicked out for good. I got suspended 8 times, I think it was, in 5 years of school. But because I had a mum that would always show up and say, like, you know, he's my kid, he's staying in school, she fought for me to stay and not get kicked out because she knew what path that would have taken. Because the school I went to, a lot of the guys I was hanging with, they ended up in prison or dead. They're pretty bad guys, you know, like, because they came from real broken homes, and they're the kids I was hanging out with, you know, because the public system has, it's just the catchment, right? It's whatever the postcode catchment is. So you could end up with a kid that's parents are still together, got cash, whatever, but then you could end up like one of my mates. He lived in a fucking caravan park, but I hang out with that dude all the time, you know. I hung out with him from primary school. By the time we're in high school, you know, he started injecting speed and shit by the time he was 16, you know what I mean? So smoking weed, and I was introduced to marijuana at 12, you know. I was around people that were older, and I was hanging out with them around the train tracks, and first time I experienced marijuana, I was 12 years old.
What was your mindset like back then when you're sort of not really interested in school and playing up?
My mindset was around just kind of living in the moment, right? Being the cool kid, hanging out with the cool kids, being a bit of a little street kid, you know. But in saying that, my friends were street kids, but I come from a good home. So, like I said, my parents built a nice house. So I always had someone, my mum was always looking for me, you know what I mean? So I was lucky that I had parents that cared about me, and I had a lot of freedom. But at the same time, when it started to get dark, it's like, where the fuck are you? You know what I mean? There was no phones, but I sort of had to be back, you know. So yeah, I was a pretty troublesome little kid, in trouble with the police a lot. Again, lucky I had good parents that sort of never gave up on me when the police would come to the door and things. I would say that I was their kid and take me back in, right? So getting back onto the finishing school, I wanted to quit, right, in year 10, like all my other buddies were doing. My parents again pushed me to stay. And then I got a job at like 14 and a half, like at Hungry Jack's, and I started learning pretty early the value of money, right? That I could hustle and flip and do shit, you know. I started getting involved with some flipping and doing things, and I actually started doing that quite young. The entrepreneurial things. My mum would take me to garage sales, and I'd buy like little bikes and shit and clean them up when I was 12, buy them for like $30 or whatever, and then flip them for 50 to kids.
Was that just something that you enjoyed doing, or?
Somehow I understood money early. Like, I realized that money could get me what I wanted in life. I did it, and then I made money, and then I could buy stuff, and I kind of liked cutting the deals and making the deals, and that's when early on in my life I started getting involved. Like I said, 12 years old was when I first started doing it, and then that progressed pretty quickly in my early teens into buying dirt bikes and boats when I was sort of 14, 15, and then I started working, so I was buying and flip. I'd earn cash, and then I'd buy motorbikes and I'd flip them. So I started doing.
How did you know that was gonna work? Did you have a lot of success doing that, or?
I kind of, because I started with the push bikes, and then I sort of did it with one motorbike, and then they used to have a thing called the trading post. So before the internet, there was like the paper, and it would come out every Thursday. And the back of my parents' house, there's a gas station over the back fence, and I knew that on a Wednesday night they'd deliver the trading post at 9 o'clock at night, where everyone else wouldn't get it till Thursday morning. So I'd jump the back fence at 9 when I was 14. I'd get the trading post, and then I'd highlight all the deals, and then my mum would drive me there after school the next day, and I'd cut it. I'd ring them as soon as in the morning, ring them, say, hey, I'm totally interested, got cash. I'd come round, and then I'd just go there, and people just didn't like clean the mud off their bike, or they were rough or whatever, you know, and you just rock up with $1,000 cash. You know, I'm like 14 years old, and I'd buy these things. I'd cut a deal. My mum would put it in the trailer for me. I'd tow it back, and then I'd just buy a sticker kit from the local bike shop, sand the frame back a bit, paint it, new tires, sticker kit, and then I'd put it straight back on the next week, and I'd make, you know, $800 or $1,000. I'm like 14 years old. You know what I mean?
That's big money for.
I was balling, yeah. So then I learned the value of money quick. I was like, oh shit, now I'm this kid, and I got fucking a flat screen TV in my room, and I got mad kicks, and I always had the latest phone, and then don't know, it kind of flowed on from that. But I was like, I can have whatever I want. You know what I mean? I can work, I can hustle. Then I, wanted a boat. I wanted a better motorbike. It was always about like I wanted better shit. So I knew that I could hustle, flip, and earn that, right? So that's where the entrepreneurial thing started very, very young for me, which is obviously why I've been able to. We'll get into the business trajectory of things. I've gone on a bit of a tangent other than school, but that's sort of, I'm just talking about my teen years,
Yeah, dude, it's still crazy though to think that your mind worked like that, because a lot of people's minds didn't work like that. Like even when you were leaving school, like when all your friends left school, how difficult it was for you to stay in school and stay on track and then
Yeah,
not only
it was
stay on
it was
track, do the things that you were just telling me about.
it was really hard, man, because when you're 15 and all your best mates have been kicked out of school, they're just hanging out, smoking bongs, going to the skate park. You didn't understand why you had to stay in school, right? You're like, well, this is shit. I'm just getting in trouble all the time. The teachers are fucking annoying me. I'm constantly getting kicked out of school. I'm constantly getting put in detention. They're on because by then I had a name. I was Aaron Pryor. I was a bad motherfucker, and teachers, I was a marked man. You got that kid in your class, he's a problem.
Yeah,
He's gonna cause you some shit. So again, the only thing that was my saving grace was my mother. So you're not leaving school, you're staying there.
yeah, I did. Yeah, well, I went in the complete opposite, bro. I was your friend, man. I was doing the things that you were saying, and I had the opportunity to leave school. My parents were like, if you want to leave, you can leave, but you just got to have a job. So when I started year 11, I think, and then I was just not interested. I was just wagging heaps, and my parents just pretty much said, if you want to leave, get a job. And then I ended up just getting a job and leaving. And yeah, and to be honest, man, I regret it a bit because I'm still doing the same job now, man. I
Hmm.
started off, got a bricklaying apprenticeship, and I've been doing it now for like 15 years. But
Yeah.
like I don't not enjoy my job. I've made a life for myself. I've made my career like work around me and stuff like that. I've done really well for the situation I've gotten myself into. But yeah, it's good to hear a different side of the story.
Well, that getting back on that, like you got pushed into a job and doing that, and that was the same with me. Like my parents threw me into an apprenticeship, um, and I sort of was kicking and screaming from that because I was like, again, they already had me lined up an apprenticeship and a job before I finished school, so I barely scraped through to year 12. I barely scraped through. I nearly quit so many times because by then I had a car, right? I had wheels by the time I was 16 and a half. Back that many years ago, it was only a $30 ticket, no points, nothing for driving illegally. So because
Yeah,
I had money, I had a Commodore, badass Commodore, lowered exhaust, rims. You know, I don't want to incriminate myself too much about some of the stuff I was getting involved in, even at that age. You know what I mean? But I was running stuff, right? I was doing stuff, and I was a fucking kid with the shit, right? So like I had a VK Calais, man. I'm 16 years old, pulling up to school with a velour interior and sacked car with, that's I haven't even got a license yet. So
yeah,
then I started realizing, like, fuck, man, I don't even need to turn up to school and just drive to the Gold Coast or something. I can go and
yeah,
just so like that's when that started, and I started sort of getting involved in smoking weed pretty heavily in year 11 and 12. One of my best mates at the time, when we became best mates, he was a heavy bong smoker. So I started doing that. So I was pretty much muted, really. Like weed muted me, and it's probably affected me, I think, like from the long run of smoking weed while still developing that hydroponic shit. Obviously, then my parents again, like pushed me into getting this apprenticeship. I went to schoolies. I came back from schoolies 17. I already had a job. And I was the fucking only person, man, because I had good parents. I was the naughtiest in school. I was failing every class. Teachers said I was going to be nothing. You're going to be nothing. You're going to be a dole bludger, like, you know, just as they do, because that's the programming that they're told that if you don't listen to the story they're telling you, you don't excel in that you're going to be nothing at life because you're not going to uni and you weren't an A+ student. So that indicates you're going to fail at life. Which kind of looking back on it now, you know, as we go into my financial situation, as life progresses, it's pretty funny. I can definitely laugh pretty heavy because my parents threw me in an apprenticeship and I started on only $6.50 an hour and $220 a week, I think it was. Again, I was like, fuck
Six
this.
fifty an hour. Oh yeah, $6.50.
$6.50,
I
yeah.
think that's what mine was as well. About $300 a week for a 40-hour week.
Yeah, it was 185 a week, I think, plus a bit of OT. He was clearing 220, you know. And lucky enough, I kind of stuck with it because really, even like I said, I was making 800, 1,000 a flip with motorbikes and boats, even when I was 14, 15. So I don't know how I kind of wasn't like, fuck this. I'll just flip and do that full time, you know. But for some reason, I just was like, I need the job. And I just flipped on the side for the extra cash, you know, with doing that and some other naughty stuff that I was involved with.
Yeah. So were you just getting anything you could get your hands on? How did you know the knowledge? Did you have your parents? Did you have your dad help you with some stuff? Or
Nah, I don't. I kind of trial and error, right? Because I started at 14. By the time I'm 15, 17, I'm doing it for 3 or 4 years. So you learn particular models, brands, right, that people want. Just like even now, there's certain cars people like, there's certain boats people like, there's certain Harleys. There's certain models and brands, and because I've been doing it from a young age, I learnt what size boat, what size motor, brand, what size bike, what size brand, what year model, and I became so good at my inventory in my own head. I could look at anything, and I knew the price of what it was, what I needed to get it for, and what I could sell it for on its condition, year model, and how many hours it had done. I could look at anything across the board, and I had an inventory, and I could look at anything, and I knew that because you got to be confident in your purchase so you don't lose, right? Because you can lose too.
Yeah. Did you ever think that could be like? Do you think that was probably the first time that you thought that you could may possibly be like an entrepreneur and not just stick to the 9 to 5?
Still didn't think even laterally like that, man. I still didn't think about doing it as a business. I just did it because I liked money. I liked what money was starting to get me. I liked that I had the freshest clothes. I always had the nicest car over everyone, and that was more looking at it was all about ego, you know. And then it was allowing me to get the girls too, you know. So then it flowed on to that, and it was all ego driven. It wasn't actually driven on looking at it as a business. It was just like, man, this gets me respect. This gets me fucking what I want with pussy. This gets me like, you know, all these things in life that as a man you're sort of driven towards, I suppose. And it just
That's
started
what
young.
we're nearly even taught that, or that no one teaches us any different when we're younger. That's probably not the greatest way to think with our ego and stuff like that. But that's just the way it is when we grow up. Like I didn't know any better way. I didn't hear any other better way. I didn't see anybody else telling me anything else. Like
Yeah.
I was definitely my way as well. Was always just trying to maybe impress someone else. It wasn't even really even trying to impress yourself. I was just trying to impress everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that, like, the ego got me in a lot of shit, like looking back on it, and even a lot of problems in my intimate relationships as life went on, you know, because my
Yeah.
ego got in the way on a lot of situations, which we'll probably get into. But this probably chat could go for a long time now. I'm thinking I've got a lot to talk about. I might need to do a 2-part series.
Yeah, we can always we
We're,
can
we're
always
on a
do a
good we're on a
second one.
good flow though. Like we'll just keep rolling and then we'll just check on the time. But yeah, now I think
Yeah.
about like I'm only at 17 at the moment. I've got another 20 years to go on top of that.
Yeah, so what was the next stage of your life? What apprenticeship did you start?
Electrical. So I was a Sparky. So my dad's electrician by trade. So is my brother. And again got thrown into that. I fucking hated it in the beginning. I was like, this is shit. My mates are all hanging out at the skate park smoking bongs. Because most people didn't work for the first year after school, right? Their parents didn't throw them into jobs. Most people were
Yeah.
just hanging out. And you're like, I'm 17 and, this is shit. I've got to go to work every day. And obviously, as you know, like being a first year apprentice, you're the fucking lackey. You're digging, like even being a sparky, you're fucking digging holes, bro. You're the rat in the roof, like you're doing all the shit. And you're like, this sucks, but it
And
didn't take me long. Yeah,
especially for you, because you were already earning money
yeah,
on the side, and probably better money than you were making then. For me, as soon as I
100.
left, I might have only been making $300 or $250 a week, but that was a lot of money for me. I was like
For sure,
one of the first people of my friends to like have cash,
for
be able
sure.
to like buy alcohol, buy cigarettes, buy whatever I needed to get. Like I bought a
Yeah,
car as well when I was 16.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, 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 especially for you if you already had the money.
yeah.
That's
And I'm
smart.
lucky that didn't derail me because now I think about, I've never actually spoken about this and thought about it from an outside perspective. That I'm surprised that didn't just make me go, fuck this. Like I can flip some shit and make $220 in an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I can do some other shit. And yeah, I'm sort of lucky now. I think about that. I didn't just quit because at the same time too, my parents never charged me rent or board even when I started making money. And I don't know if that was the right idea, but it was good for me. So I was,
yeah,
you know,
more money in your pocket.
more money in my pocket. And so then if we go 17, I started my apprenticeship straight after schoolies. Went to schoolies, come back, had to start because I already got I got the job before I'd finished school, and that was a big thing for my mum. She got to rub it in the teachers' faces at the graduation because no one else had a job yet. And they
Yeah,
like asked her, "What am I going to do?" And they're like, "Well, he's already got an electrical apprenticeship," which obviously at the time Sparky's like the top dog. You got to do exams and all these things. It's not easy to actually get. You got to get qualified. You got to do, like your interview isn't just talking to someone. You got to do actual maths exams and things and English, which is funny because I failed all that. Right, I was a D student, but this is the difference, right? Is kids are told there's something, but teachers forget. Like if a kid's interested in something or he wants something, he's gonna fucking get it if he wants it. you
yeah,
know.
100%.
So that
Did you actually learn any lessons from school, or like anything that you took away from it, something that actually sticks with you?
the only thing from school, man, was social experiment, dealing with interactions and conflict. So
Yeah,
dealing with being put in situations with so many kids from so many different upbringings. School teaches you street smarts. I grew up some bad motherfuckers, you know what I mean? I've seen some heavy shit. So it taught me the ability to, when I had to be an adult, that I'd been around a lot of fucking gang stuff, and I was always popular, so I never had any issues for it coming in my direction, but I was involved in doing some stupid shit. So it
even at
taught me.
school that stuff was going on.
Nah, not in the school, man. Like at the parties, like on the weekends and after school and stuff. You know what I mean? So it was just like I said. A lot of those kids I hung out with, they ended up in prison. You know,
Yeah,
they were my mates. Like that was my influence, right? Like these are the dudes that you hang with and you go to the park with and skate every afternoon. And you got to think the way they're behaving it's not normal behavior, but it taught you street smarts because life's actually about, a lot of it is about being street smart and reading situations, knowing when to get out of a situation or how to get out of a situation. So school taught me street smarts. It taught me how to interact with different people, different cultures. Taught me how to deal with conflict because obviously you were a kid and you had these people that were trying to manipulate you that were older than you and you were supposed to look up to them, and a lot of them are actually playing psychological games on you as a child. Looking back on it, they were using their tactic of age and mental capacity to play emotional games with you, which is pretty fucked up. Um, like looking back on it, on the way the teachers behaved is disgusting.
yeah, absolutely. It's just being young. You're so vulnerable, and you're just so willing to listen to anybody that's older. You sort of just believe anything that they say.
Dude, their gospel is God. You know what I mean? And that's what I mean by saying with the teachers, they were trying to be God, and they were, to be honest, because if you listen to what they said, and shit, man, if you didn't have a good parents or a good role model to back you, and say that, you're valuable, kind of like my mum constantly backing me, knowing that I was great, knowing something would change in the future and school was just a process. Who knows where I would have ended up. I probably would have definitely ended up in a different direction.
Did you ever think about that at the time?
No.
Or you just...
No, I was in the moment. I was young, super immature. Just for some reason, like, just doing me, and just had an attitude of like, fuck the world and I know better.
Yeah.
But then reflecting back on that, like, that's why I'm strong in business, right? Because I was different and I knew what I wanted. I knew what I could have.
Yeah.
So that's where that sort of comes from, I think.
Yeah. So now you've left school, you've got your apprenticeship, you're selling some stuff on the side.
Yeah.
What's next?
So then the apprenticeship's 4 years, right? Another very challenging situation. When you're 17, 4 years feels like 20.
Yeah.
So the challenge before was keeping me to year 12. Next challenge is keeping me to finish my apprenticeship. I wanted to fucking quit so many times. College isn't easy. Being a Sparky, I never did physics at school. A lot of it was physics and mathematics. So this is where then maybe the whole not listening at school thing come back to haunt me a little bit. But lucky enough, I had enough intellect that if I did ever apply myself, I could learn and retain information. Next challenge was that, finishing the apprenticeship, which I did. Then I started to progress into the industry of being a tradesman. Even during that. So then I bought my first house when I was 20. And so that was again sort of driven from my parents, who, like, my mum loves real estate and she understands the value of real estate. I didn't sort of understand that. I just followed her lead and like her pushing me into that. So I bought my first house. It was 315,000 when I was 20, just before I turned 21, basically. Because that was the other thing. I turned tradesman young, and quite quickly you start progressing on income very quickly. So next minute I'm at school, I'm getting told I'm not going to be anything and this and that. I was already starting to make good money in school. Then quite quickly in my apprenticeship, I started getting on commercial jobs where they pay side allowance and EBA. So by the time I was 19, I was clearing $1,000 a week, still living at home, not paying rent, not paying any utilities. Then I started stacking cash,
You're still doing the side hustle?
100%. Always did the side hustle on being naughty and doing it through cars. It progressed into vehicles then because I could register them. So I started buying and flipping vehicles.
Did you get pretty heavily into drugs around this stage? Because I know that's sort of when I started.
Yeah, I got heavy into ecstasy.
Yeah.
So I went through a period between 19 and 20, and again, it's probably lucky I finished my apprenticeship, because I would have been going to work scattered, fucking not there, doing a job that could have killed me,
Yeah.
So the party scene was pretty big, and don't get me wrong, I had some fucking amazing times. That's when the drugs were good, right? So it was a period of time. But then I met a pretty good, solid chick when I was like 21, sorry. I had a relationship for 2 years before that with a whack job, trauma girl that had a lot of drinking and drug problems. And we obviously bonded at that time because that's where I was at in my life. And then met a really good chick, didn't do drugs, didn't smoke, barely drunk, super driven, fucking super, super hot. And was successful already at her own age, was a hard worker. And then that's where that journey began with that. And then bought my first house, finished my apprenticeship, started being a tradie. Then next minute I'm 21, I'm clearing 1,500 a week now, which is a lot of money.
What did you do? Did you did you have goals back then? Did you set any goals to get the house, or was your...
No. And it didn't until probably fucking 28 or 29 when I started doing personal development. I was like, holy fuck, my whole life I was doing law of attraction without even realizing it, with visualizing cars that I wanted. You know, my girlfriend that I was saying is super hot, like that I've seen her on a magazine, and I was like, fucking, I want that chick. And certain phones and certain holidays and all these things I didn't realize. Like I'd visualized it, law of attraction, and I got it. Where if I was goal driven, I would have been able to sort of, you know, check in on that and be like, holy shit, I'm ticking and kicking all these goals that are well advanced on what I should be doing. Like, fuck, man. Even now I'm older, I'm like, I can't believe I bought a house when I was 20, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I just,
It's pretty good effort, man.
it's wild. You know what I mean? Like, it's so hard to even get one now that it just blows my mind. But if I knew what I had back then, like, I'd be a lot more financially in a different position now. I'd be very, very wealthy if I knew what I had, because you just leverage on that, right? I was on high income. I had equity quite quick. But anyway, you live and you learn.
Well, you still got to be grateful for where you were. You were in a lot better position than a lot of other people were at that age,
100%.
especially all your friends.
Much better position. But then this is the ego problem I had, right? Is I didn't realize, because I was like, I'm Aaron Pryor, I'm always king, I'm God, I'm always going to have the hottest chick, I'm always going to have the nicest car, I'm always going to have the most cash in my pocket. I didn't realize, man, like, even back then I had more fucking than I could ever dream of. I had the house, I had an incredible, beautiful partner, I had the 2 dogs, I had fucking real nice car, I was traveling. I'm a fucking kid, man, you know, and it's like I had everything that people work their entire life to find, and I didn't respect it, and I didn't own it, right? I just egoed it. And ego caught up with me, man. Ego caught up with me of not being in control of that.
In what way? Give us an example.
Well, it caught up with me in that relationship. I easily could have married that woman. We were like totally amazing together. And I got caught up with the boys and the brothers and the gang shit, and was like, because all my mates at the time were single, right? And looking back on it, they were just, they just wanted to fucking, Azza, come hang out. We got to go do this. We got to run that, like, and party, and, you know, and I got caught up in giving more attention to my mates than to my missus, right? And it cost me an incredible woman because of maturity, because I didn't understand what it was. But then I always had the ego, like, well, if it doesn't work, I'm fucking Aaron Pryor. I get the fuck I want. And I still did that at the time when we split. It's funny I'm even talking about this if anyone ever listens to this stuff that I'm saying, that people that know me. But at the time, my girlfriend was like the #1 model. She couldn't be beaten, right? She won every model competition. She was Miss Indy. She was Miss Hawaiian. She was fucking on front page of Ralph's Zoo. Like, she was the top dog, right? When we split, how do you fucking out, you know, again, the ego. How do you one up that? How do you find a girl that's hot, successful, driven? Because she at that stage had bought her own business at 21. She started a salon, and I've seen this girl come along, and she knocked her off the pedestal of the modeling comp. She beat her. Dark haired, big titted, bad bitch. So what do? Ego. All right, well, there's the girl. She's the one who's fucking, I gotta get her. She beat her.
How did
She's
you
hot.
how did you even meet these girls? How did you even meet the first? How did you get in the circle of even meeting the first girl?
So the first
It's not
girl
like
was
someone you just meet in the street.
nah. So and there was no internet back then, so you had to have balls, right? So the first girl used to model comp at the pubs and stuff. So she lived in the area where I lived, grew up in the area, and she did a model comp at my local bar, and she won it, as she does, and they posted her on the posters and shit, and she was in like this cute ass like outfit, like holding a baseball bat with her name across her ass. This is where the law of attraction come in, which I didn't realize at the time, and I just kind of imprinted that vision of how hot she was in her name. And then we sort of run into each other at one of the local bars, and we sort of didn't really hit it off too much, but like, 'cause I thought she was with this dude at the time. But then she started training my gym, and I just went up to her on the leg press and hit her straight up, man. And then we started to.
What was the pickup line?
I think at the time she cut hair, so I pretended I wanted her to cut my hair to get in.
Yeah.
So I used that as the opening. Hey, like, fuck, we seen each other the other day. Like, heard you cut hair. And then I saw we had a joke that when I ran into her, I'm like, oh, I thought, is that your boyfriend? She's like, oh, no way. You know, let me know. Hey, I'm single.
Yeah.
And then it sort of ran on from there. And then we had a few catch ups and then we hit it off. And then we were together for like 5 years after that.
Yeah.
But
Now you've got this new goal of this new woman.
Well, and it wasn't even a goal. It was the ego just trying to replace what I lost because I was fucking devastated, right? And when we split, that's when I got my first trauma about losing a woman that I loved and how much it hurt. And how
Did you
much
think about this at the time, or were you sort of just like being Mr. Big Shot at the time, didn't really care?
I got wounded. I got wounded hard. Yeah, no, she wounded me. Like I went quickly into it at the time. Like I still was, because I was well known at that stage by dating her and the money I had and the flash cars I had. Like it was pretty easy for me to be able to get women. They knew me. I had a name. And for some reason, obviously, women like cars, money, and fucking some dude who's jacked up, and you know what I mean. And like, and I get it, I suppose. Shit, it's like us. We like women a certain way, and at the time, I had a rep, so I didn't find it hard to find women to have sex with. But I definitely was like super devastated because it's the first girl I'd ever loved and cared about like truly deeply. We never had any problems. It was just maturity that made us split up. You know, we could have easily got married. We looked at rings. I could have proposed and she would have said yes any time. It was just my mates at the time were single, right? And looking back on it, they just weren't happy in themselves, and they took me along the ride, and I was stupid enough to follow it. Because as soon as
Yeah.
boys get girlfriends, they're fucking gone one by one. You know, it's like
Yeah. And that's the thing is, all of the lads usually like, as soon as you do get a missus, they're pretty much like they throw you in that box where they're like, oh, you're pretty much you're gonna be gone soon and all this shit.
oh, and it's all immaturity, man, and it's totally out of them being sad in their own life, and they're trying to fuck up your world, and you just don't even see it because you trust them as your brothers. But maturity, when maturity kicks in, you realize that all those brothers, half of them you'll never be fucking mates with in 5 or 10 years. At the time, they were just totally jealous, and it was like my life. You know, I was dialed in hard, and if I understood what I had everything I could ever want, and I allowed outside influence to basically fuck up a situation which I got to take responsibility for because it's maturity on my side as well. You know.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to learn at a young age because you're just a product of your environment, really.
For sure, man, and that was my first trauma around women and breakups because then at the time I owned the house. We got it while we were together. There was some open threats about, you know, you're gonna have to give me half the house. I had to give a certain amount of furniture, cash, cutlery, fucking like I had a list given to me that I had to give. Otherwise, we're gonna go down the legal route, and that was my first trauma around assets, women, and money. That a woman you could love dearly, treat them like a fucking queen, that they can turn on you in an instant if they believe that they're scorned.
Yeah. Well, were you actually treating her like a queen, or were you just buying her things?
No, that one definitely I was treating her fucking well above like, you know, with flowers and you know, and really like I loved on her. But in saying that, obviously I was partying too every weekend. So is that treating her right? Probably not. But in other areas, definitely loyalty. Like I never cheated on her. I was in the clubs every weekend, and there's a lot of women always around us, and I was loyal in that situation. Um, but yeah, I think it was just maturity at that time. She was progressing quicker. She bought a business at 21. Who does that even, you know? She owned her own salon and was making fucking big money as a kid.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah,
Just
definitely impressive. And that's why we bonded, right? Because I was an entrepreneur as well. I just didn't understand how much I was that I already had done so much, and that's why we bonded, right? I just didn't harness it until a bit longer. It took me a while to understand what it was.
Yeah, so the sort of bad crowd that you were hanging around with, did you aspire to be like any of these guys, or were they all just sort of drop kicks?
Wasn't about aspiring to be them, they're just my boys and my mates, and I was so driven to be so loyal to the death with men as brothers that I was too loyal to some, right? Because
What
it's
made
just
you
who
think that though? What is that? Just who you
I
are, or
yeah, it's just who I am. Like I run on loyalty, respect, and trust and honesty, and I'd just do anything for like my brothers at the time. Like that's where my whole back tat is kind of like that gang tat, you know. It says brotherhood. That was my first tat, my whole back, and it truly like isn't bullshit to me. You know what I mean? Like if any of my boys ever needed me, no matter what the situation was, I wasn't fearful, I wasn't scared. I'd be there for them, you know, and expecting the same from them. It was just that boy connection of, you know, no matter what, to the death, like whatever we've got to do, we'll handle it.
can you give any examples of some times where some shit would have gone down? You could.
All the time, man, out clubbing. We used to
Yeah.
punch on nearly every time. Every weekend we'd fight, you know, we'd run clubs and get into huge gang fights, like with, you know, many a times like weapons, fucking, you know, getting hit over the head with glass, like, you know, people picking up stools, pool cues, like back then it was different, right? There's no ID scanners. But again, I learnt pretty quick, like my mates who wanted to punch on all the time, and because I was such the brother that they knew would swing straight behind them, they used that, right, as fuel of like, fucking Az has always got my back, you know what I mean? He's gonna always be there for me. But then eventually I got interested in women. This was going back a little bit now to 19, 20. I'm like, fuck man, we ain't gonna pick up chicks, just going out fighting. Like this is stupid. Like we're just like punching on every weekend, you know, getting your shirt ripped and getting blood on you. And you know, I was pretty lucky. I came out unscathed somehow always, and yeah, it was just I don't know, man. It just come down to ego again, right? It's like, you know, it's
At the end
just
of the day, it gets you nowhere doing that shit.
gets you fucking nowhere, dude. So I was doing all the things that were right and all the things that were wrong. I was making the bank. I had the fucking property. I was making heaps of extra cash on the side. But then I was just going out every weekend and spending it and being hungover and feeling like shit. And I was fighting every weekend with the boys. Like, but I thought as a man and a young boy that like that was God, right? That was king shit.
Yeah.
You know, always had a pocket full of money, the flyers closed, and I was fighting everyone and I was hooking up with hot chicks.
Thinking they're sick, cunt.
Thinking you're the
But
dog, you're the man, you know what I mean? Like when it's like when it's actually fucking stupid, right?
do you think when was there a pivotal point where you thought that this was stupid, or was this enough and you wanted to, or even just a pivotal point when you wanted to start your business, or how did that come about?
Pivotal point. Yeah, I couldn't even pinpoint a real pivotal. Well, yeah, there's probably later in my life there was a real pivotal point where I had to shift. Probably at about 29 when I went through some heavy shit with the relationship that I was in with that particular girl that I was talking about that I took on. That was the opposite to my other chick. You know, one was blonde hair, blue eyes, innocent girl next door. You know, really good family qualities, family still together, was raised properly. And this is then when my fucking real trouble started around women. Was that
Had started your business then yet?
No, no. So I was still at this stage working as an electrician, and then I kept progressing in that industry as an electrician. Right, I kept going back to tech school and getting more tickets because I would just realize that if I wanted more money, you just had to keep skilling yourself up, right? So then I kept following as far as I could in my industry to as high as I could through getting extra skills, you know. And then I ended up getting into the mining game around 25. is when I started hearing of the money that the guys in the mines are making, 130 grand a year. We were on 75, 80 back in the city. And I'm like, well, fuck, I want to make another 50K a year. How do I get that? So I started researching what sort of tickets I needed to get. And then I'd go to tech school and get like all these extra tickets so I could get a job. And then I got a job in the mines and I was on a shitty roster. It was 3-1. And I only did like one swing, and then I've seen like guys out there that were making 50,000 more than what we were on, and they were carrying laptops, and they had the same trade as us, but they had this other one called instrumentation, which was a second trade. And I was like, what the fuck? So I started researching how to get that, so then I could increase my income and also decrease my output.
Yeah. Did you ever think though, like, were you working away from home?
Yeah, that was when 25 is when I started working away from home.
Did you ever think that was that like, were you just doing that purely for money? Because it's not really, they're doing all that FIFA. It's not really a way of life per se. So what was your mindset going into that?
Two things. Money, one. Second was in your head, you're like, oh, you go and do these rosters of, at that time it was shit 3-1, but as soon as then I got upskilled, I went and got re-employed as one of those people that I've seen walking around, and then I was on 5 days on, 5 days off. So in my head, I was like, I'm working half the year. Well, once you take holidays, I'm working 5 months of the year for $60,000 or $70,000 more a year than I can make in Brisbane. So one, money, two, lifestyle, because I was on even time, fly in, fly out. Then you don't realise at the time, because no one speaks about it, that your relationships are going to just fucking fuck up with your intimate partner, with your friendships, because it's not normal to not be here, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
can you explain what it's like to do the FIFO job? Like, what's
it's pretty much the most mentally torturing thing you'll ever do in your life. Not ever, but one of the highest, most emotional trauma things you'll ever do. If you're single and you've got a goal, you'd probably cruise through it. If you've got an intimate relationship with a woman and she's back here and you're out there and you're trying to manage that whilst managing being away, it's very fucked up. It's very challenging, because what happens is you get addicted to the money and you get addicted to the time off. So then in your head, you're like, how the fuck do I quit this job and come back to the city and go from 3,500 a week to 1,500, and I've got to work 6 days a week when I'm only working 5 months of the year? I've got to work fucking 12 months a year, and I've got to decrease my income by 50 or 60,000. So they call it the golden handcuffs. So you get addicted to the lifestyle, addicted to the money, but then you got this chick back at home that's fucking telling you, hey, I'm struggling, and they're crying on the phone, and you're sleeping in a fucking single bed like a dog. So you're traumatized with that. You're told where to be every day. Like,
what's the living lifestyle like up there?
Oh, it's fucking shit. Like, eventually, as I progressed income wise and job wise, you end up in better camps, man. But let's say 90% of the guys out there, they're living like animals. They're in these steel boxes, in these stiff single beds with shit pillows, and it's prison. It's paid prison. You're this man, and you're told on this day, on Tuesday, you're on a fucking flight, and you ain't coming home until that ticket tells you you're coming home. So that loss of control, and you're sitting there on Sundays some days, and Sunday nights, Saturday nights, hearing your mates going out, or your missus are going out with their friends or whatever it is, and you're like, the loss of control as a man to be like, you know what, fuck this. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be at home with my girl. I want to be with my mates or whatever. And you don't have a control until that plane leaves. That's when it fucking leaves. That's when you leave. So that mental anguish that comes with that is like fucking emotional torture.
Yeah. It's not really a way to live, and I really think, as much as I think that I wish that I started developing my business and all this stuff earlier in life. But I'm really glad that I got my partying and stuff out of the way in my 20s.
For sure.
And done all of, because I'm really not interested anymore. Like, I'll have a few beers here and there, or on a birthday or something. I'll get pissed or whatever. But yeah, I'm so concentrated on business and investing and just bettering myself now. And when I was 20, that's all I really wanted to do was party, and I did. And I'm sort of glad I did that, because that means I did what I wanted. So, but yeah, doing the FIFO back then, it would have been really hard, especially for me. I'm very similar to you, man, in the sense that I'm like very loyal to my friends, and my friends like my family. So yeah, I couldn't even really imagine like being away that much of the time. But like you said, look, golden handcuffs. That's a great way of putting it. And nobody wants to go backwards in life either. So like, you're earning that money. Yeah, doing every second week, working every second week, and then you got to come back to something less. It's like, it's hard. It would be so hard. How long did you end up working in there for?
5 years, man.
Did you save then, or were you, because you were only working every second week, were you coming back and blowing everything?
So this is the double-edged sword of FIFO. So as a man that's had their freedom taken, their emotional freedom and their fucking freedom to do what they want taken, the attitude you get in your head is, I fucking deserve to now go home and do what the fuck I want and spend what I want, because I'm going to go back and get paid another 3.5K next week. So I can burn 3.5K or 4K this weekend. And because I've been in a prison, I'm going to celebrate my freedom.
You're staying in hotels and shit like that.
What do you just do when you're making that sort of coin? You're 25 years old. That's a lot of money, bro. You know what I mean? And we're talking 12 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
That's not chump change to be making that sort of cash. And you then reward yourself for the suffering. And you know who else gets rewarded? Because she's had to suffer. So how do you reward your girl? Jewelry, shoes, clothes, resorts, dinners. So every time you're back, it's like, well, let's celebrate because I haven't seen you in a week. So it's 5-star resorts, 5-star dinners. And in your head, you're like, well, I can afford it to spend $2,000 fucking this weekend. So then the vicious cycle becomes, again, reward for that, rewarding her because she's had to suffer being on her own. Like, oh my God, you know. And I kind of, because let's wind the clock back, got spooked with my first girlfriend about the property and assets and all that stuff, and like obviously how well I treated her and whatnot, and gave her so many gifts, and she wasn't as much as a taker because she earned her own money. She was well off with her business. She actually contributed, but then when I got spooked, I was like, well, fuck this, I'm just gonna live, right? Because maybe one day this chick's gonna do the same, and then what's the point of having paid down the mortgage and have all this cash in the bank? Because then she just gets it. So you know what? I'm going to spend it.
Yeah.
You know, and how am I going to spend? I'm going to spend that through travel. I'm going to spend that through experiences. And because she's my girl, she gets to come on those experiences, because obviously you're not going to do it on your own, right?
When was the first time you started traveling? I'm interested in this because I've been a big traveler myself.
My parents got me into it. They took me to America and Canada and Hawaii when I was 14. And that's when I didn't even realize at the time, but that's why I got addicted to traveling the world. I was blessed enough that they took me on an amazing holiday when I was a kid, and I got to experience that there's another whole world out there. There's the way people eat food differently, they talk differently, they act differently, things look different. And they took me to Canada, America, and Hawaii on that trip. We went away for 6 weeks, I think it was. And then I didn't start traveling again until I think I went to Vanuatu with one of my girlfriends. And then I did a cruise, and then I started kind of traveling a lot more after that with my other girlfriend. We did a couple of trips to Thailand, which I fucking loved. We had so much fun. And then it started progressing more and more, and it just got more and more as life went on, and I had the finances and the time, and that's obviously the even time helps that, right, too. You could take, say, 7 days off your roster and get 3 weeks off, or if you're on 2 and 2, you take 2 weeks off, you get 6 weeks off. So yeah, there's so much we go into God travel. Like then I became addicted to doing New Year's overseas. I was like traveling. I started doing every New Year's. I'd celebrate somewhere in the world, somewhere else. I did that for like 10 years.
Wow. Where do you reckon's your favourite place?
Big question, hard question.
Well, where's your favourite summer place and where's your favourite winter place?
Canada's incredible on winter and summer. Canada's very high. Canada would be very high on the list. And then possibly after that, what would I say? God, I've been to so many places. Like obviously I love going to America because I've got a lot of friends there. And then they all have different aspects to it, right? Like what you love about it. Europe's amazing. Switzerland's absolutely incredible. I loved Switzerland. Each place has something about it. Like I love Asia because it's like lawless and that freedom. If you've got money, you can do what you want.
Do you like the more of the third world countries, or do you like the?
I like the third world countries and the fact of the cheapness and the charisma, like the charisma of the humans. So the fact that you can see people with nothing and how happy they are, and they're pure energy. Yeah, they've got fuck all. You know what I mean? So I love that about the third world countries, and I love the service. I love how amazing the service is. Like if you've got money, you can go to those places and you can stay in these fancy places and you really feel like you've had an epic holiday because you just get doted on. You're staying in villas. That's what I love about Thailand, the villas and like the restaurants and just scootering everywhere and just the lawlessness of it, of being there as a tourist and, you know, running around being a dickhead and not, you can get out of anything with cash.
Yeah. Have you ever done the sort of like the backpacking way or just sort of moving around? Or
mine was always the most expensive hotels and restaurants is where I live.
did you ever do any like long trips though? Because I seen like when I did South America, I definitely wasn't making the money that you were making, but like I've done a bit of traveling. I always just made it work. But yeah, I've done like some backpacking. Like I've gone for 3 months, and I definitely couldn't afford to stay in fancy hotels and shit when I did that. But I made it work and just did like the backpacking thing. But have you done like any longer trips?
Yeah. A lot of my trips when I turned 28 and I went through a pretty heavy situation with the dark-haired girl that I was saying that I took on. That's when my whole life changed when I took her on. That's when the direction shifted.
Have all the holidays been with the missus at the time?
Only during my 20s, and then late in my 20s, no, I started traveling solo.
You didn't really go with the boys.
Yeah, I did in a couple of the trips. Like we did like the snowboarding trips with the boys. Like, but a lot of the times I was flying on my own solo, so I'd fly solo and then meet them over in Canada to go snowboarding. But I was blessed enough to do a couple of 6-week stints in Canada and hill hop. So when I went through a pretty big shift at around 28, with that dark-haired girl that was a bad bitch, I didn't work for 2 years, and I pretty much just traveled like a fucking boss, and I would just go places for 6 weeks. I was pretty heavily cashed up. At that time, I sold my house because she tried to sue me for it. And again, that's when I got trauma around women and them taking things that aren't theirs. And believing that they're entitled to shit they haven't even fucking earned off men. And I'm not sure where that comes from. That whole Western society has entitled these women that because they dated you, they can come with nothing and you can work your whole life, and that you have to give them your wealth and assets because they dated you, which is just fucking ludicrous. And the system, I believe, the more I've gotten older and I analyze marriage, is a contract. It's a business agreement for the government, and it's a business agreement between two people. It's commitment, obviously, but a lot of it's around, I believe, to erode men's wealth and mental well-being. You know, because when you get divorced or separate with a woman that has children with you, you lose 60% of your wealth, and they're allowed to attack your super. Yeah, well, why can a woman get paid out a man's super now at, let's say, 30, 40 years old, when he doesn't even get that till he's 67 if he even makes it there? Yeah, she gets it tax-free.
That's pretty ridiculous, yeah. Do you think that from these experiences does that deter you from dating or seeing women?
It deters me not from dating, it deters me from getting into too close to women. When I do date them, I keep a very strong barrier up because I've been hit a couple of times very hard emotionally and financially. And then after I went through that situation when I was 28, like, to go into it a little bit, the chick that the dark-haired girl, me and her were dating, we broke up. We were sort of on and off a lot because she was fucking nuts. And then when we broke up, we kept hooking up, and she got pregnant and didn't tell me that she had been with another fucking dude.
While you guys were dating?
No, we were broken up, and she was coming out and seeing me in the mines. She would drive out there and see me on the weekends. And obviously, me being single and sleeping with other women, I was like, this is great. I've got best of both worlds, because at the time I was seeing another girl that was really incredible that, again, I could have dated, married. But for some reason, I like to make stupid decisions and keep going back to the bad bitch, because she was obviously
self-sabotage.
Well, and she was fun. She liked drugs. She was fun. She was good in bed, and she was super hot. Again, the ego was making decisions. And this podcast's going for a long time. Was that all good? There's definitely
Yeah, some of the other ones are going for like 2.5 hours.
Okay. And anyway,
for as long as you want, man. Just fucking ramble.
Me and her, I got back from the mines, said she was pregnant. We'd already had some abortions during our relationship because I just didn't want to have a child for this girl because of her actions and behavior wasn't aligned with having a child with her. So this potentially was going to be the third time that she had to get an abortion from me. So we went to the clinic. She starts crying her eyes out, and we left and we went and got a scan, and then the scan landed on me to do with my roster because it said that she was a certain amount of weeks pregnant. So I'm like, well, I know where I was. I know that I hooked up with you on that weekend because of my mining roster. She gets pregnant. We decide to get back together. Everyone celebrates. We have a huge baby shower at my parents', get an animal farm, all this shit. I birthed this child, a son, gave him a name, gave him my last name, and this is heavy shit. And then raised this kid to find out 7 months in that it wasn't my kid. It was another bloke's kid. So this fucking bitch had lied, had hidden that she had hooked up with a guy at the same time. She actually did a DNA test behind my back with this other motherfucker as well. I came home from the mines one time, my son's seat's missing out of my car. I'm like, where's the kid? This fucking cunt is like, oh, just mum's looking after him so we can go to the shopping centre and hang out. Takes me to a shopping centre, has like all people through the shopping centre watching because she thinks I'm going to fucking murder her when she tells me the information. Takes me to a shopping centre and is like, oh, I got to tell you something about Levi, this child. I knew straight away what it was. I was like, don't you fucking dare do that in this environment. Like, you can't. And then she was doing, oh, I'm just worried you're going to fucking attack me. Rah, rah. Long story short, kicked her out, got a removalist truck, grabbed all her shit, threw her out, took her back to her mum's with the kid. she basically within 7 days was in a different state with my child, who everyone thought was my kid at the time, started playing Happy Families. Like a week later, she tried to sue me then for my property. That's who tried to take my house after doing all that. And so I've lost I've lost a girlfriend, I've lost a son, found out that I've fucking raised a kid that wasn't mine, went through pregnancy, birthing this kid, everything, like heavy shit, you know what I mean? And at the time, again, my ego kicked in. I fucking jumped straight on a plane, shot to LA, called my mate, I'm like, fuck, shit's going down. Shot straight to LA and just went on this fucking bender of hooking up with all these Californian chicks, and ego again was driving that, and I thought I was like dealing with it, like obviously not dealing with it.
Did she know from the start? How far in did she know?
She knew there was a potential and she just didn't fucking say it. We spoke about it while she was pregnant because I knew that potentially she'd hooked up and we should have got a DNA test. Well, I didn't know you could do it while she was pregnant. And then we were going to do it when the kid was born, and then kind of time got on, and then I made the mistake of bonding, right? I bonded with the kid. So then
Was
I
the
wanted
other
it.
dude involved at the start?
Nah. But what do you know, right? This bitch was a snake. She lies, she cheats. She was a trauma kid. Had a lot of childhood trauma from her mother and father and never fucking dealt with it and went through her life fucking ruining men's lives, carrying that shit with her. And I was one of her victims, you know. Um, and that changed my whole trajectory, man. That changed my whole path, bro. Like I
Still,
could be.
obviously, a lot of hate there.
I don't know if it's hate. Me and her, we've connected. We caught up actually the other day and went for a walk together. And she's done a lot of work, and it's probably helped, like, you know, in some circumstances. And I don't try and hold on to it. I'm just speaking from like how it feels when I talk about it, because obviously I don't revisit it that often.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago
How,
now. 10.
yeah, I could imagine. Oh, I couldn't imagine how painful that would have been. What what were you thinking? What was the mental state like after you found out?
Fuck, you're traumatized, man. You're shocked. You're sort of at the same time you're happy to a degree that you weren't stuck with her in a situation, because when you first have a kid and my maturity level probably wasn't there still yet. I was traveling the world before that. I had heaps of money. I was having a good time. Then when you have a child, man, fuck, your freedom is gone on so many levels. So I was kind of resentful to a degree on what it was doing to my lifestyle. So in the beginning, I was absolutely fucking devastated, and I was excited that I was free from her and free from the situation, and then I could meet another girl again, you know. But that was, again, I wasn't dealing with it. That was just living in the moment. Because like I said, when I split from her, I jumped on a plane. I went 6 weeks in America and fucking had the best time of my life, you know. But I was running. I was running from what had happened.
When you came
Um,
home, the problem's still there.
yeah, and it was there in a fucking big way, man, because nobody knew what had happened, and then all of a sudden, people are seeing her with another guy, with my son, seeing me in California balling out with all these people and living, like, partying in all these clubs and in all these booths and with all these DJs and doing all this crazy shit, and come back to just a wall of people, because I lived in an area where we all knew each other. People just going, "What the fuck? Like, who the hell is this dude? And why are you there? And why is she there?" And fuck, you know,
Did
it
you
was a
have some
lot.
friends then to sort of fall onto, to talk to?
Fuck, I never really opened up about it much. I just kind of pushed through it through, again, like, I at that time then sold my house because I was sick of these women saying they're going to take my shit, and I didn't want to work. I didn't want to have to keep paying the mortgage, so that's what gave me the ability to not work for 2 years, man, and just do me. And I just traveled the world and snowboarded and hung out and was able to live a very, like, that was my healing journey. I could
Look,
heal from, yeah.
yeah. Looking back now, do you look at it as sort of a blessing in disguise, or what are your thoughts on it now, looking back?
The blessing it gave me was it made me visit my ego and visit me as the man of, like, this King Kong motherfucker that was unshakable, unbreakable. That I turned 30 and I had more when I was 20 than when I was 30, right? So my whole 20s was I'm fucking king. I had the money, I had the pussy, I had the fucking cars, I had the holidays, I had the house, I had the dogs. I had this picket fence shit, right? As a man, like you like tick it off, like I would fucking envy that shit now if I looked at that from an outside. So it made me visit my ego of, hey man, you can fucking lose it all in a second. You can be fucking like that. I was living back with my parents, man. I got fucking had down back with my parents. I had no partner. I was turning 30 and I was in a worse emotional situation. Financial wasn't bad still because I was all cashed up, but I was like, fuck, I didn't see myself turning 30 and not being completely set up with all these things that I had previously. And it was just from taking a very wrong decision in my life of when I chose that particular girl. She showed a lot of red flags through the whole relationship. She was a fucking psycho. She had so much mental baggage, trauma baggage from her childhood, and she would lie, she would cheat, but she was a drug at the same time. She was so hot and so fun, and we had such great sex that I was addicted to her like a drug, you know?
It's
And,
crazy that if women can do shit like that. All
bro,
it takes is a good-looking woman and some good sex, and
and,
you
and, and
play
fun,
tricks on
like,
yourself. You play tricks in your own mind. Went through a similar situation, but not the kid thing, but yeah, just wanting to be with someone just because of their sort of their status or the way they
status,
look, the
man.
way they make you
That's it,
feel.
because you got to think and that was where my ego was driving so many of my decisions through my life at that stage. Was you got to think, man, I was dating those two girls for nearly 10 years of my 20s, and not many men have experienced this, but you walk into a room and the whole room stops. Like, no matter where you go, like, and what does that do to a man? And you're like, well, that's my girl. And this whole room, no matter whether they're girls or guys, stop what they're doing and stare at them. You know, it drives your ego. And at that time, I was so ego driven because I was trying to be something, you know. And that would be my biggest takeaway was like I had to reflect and I had to look at myself and go through the depths of darkness, man. Of some days I'd sit there and I felt like I was in a well, kicked to the bottom, and there was no ladder. I could see the light, and I was just fucking lost, shattered. Couldn't believe that I'd ended up there, and it fucking mentally just destroyed me. And I probably should have got some help back then, because now it's come back and it's haunting me again now with what I just went through last year. And that's why I took my situation recently so much heavier, because it's so similar, the situation, to what happened 10 years ago. So similar with with the girl as well. She's very similar in the way she's
Yeah.
behaved and acted.
Do you think that because of who you are and what you have, that you sort of attract these women that may not have, your best interest at heart?
For sure, that's something I've got to visit, is why I attract these type of girls that, one, they've got a lot of trauma. Like, why is my frequency allowing that into my world? And is it because I'm such a giver and I want to fix people and I want to help people, instead of being like analyzing it and going, you know what, like, why am I even doing that? Like, we're skipping ahead of the story now, but the last girlfriend, I'd worked through this shit with this girl at 28 with the child situation. I didn't have a girlfriend for 4 years after that. Like, of course I dated. I had lots of girlfriends, but when I say girlfriend, it means like you're the only one in the world knows, and I'm committed to one woman. I
Yeah.
didn't do that for 4 fucking years. I did not commit to one woman for 4 fucking years after that. I was so traumatized till I was 34, and obviously we're jumping the story. But then when I then started my business and got quite successful again because I'd rebuilt myself, then when the last girl came in, she come with fucking zeros, you know,
Yeah.
no money, a son that was still breastfeeding, and I was living at the time in a waterfront property that I'd built myself up to. I was living very well above average. My business was very successful. I had a lot of money again. I had no debt. I was traveling the world again. I was basically doing everything that I loved. Life was great. And I decided to connect with a girl. And then again, I was just looking for sex and someone to hook up with. I knew she had a kid. I didn't even think about it. But because this person was, a professional narcissist, she could mirror exactly what I needed at the time and wanted. And I hit it off with her so hard that I allowed that to go further than it ever needed to go. And it's cost me detrimentally now because now I've got age on my side and I've been attacked financially and emotionally again, savagely. And it's like, yeah, it's not a nice place to sit. That's for sure.
There's definitely a point now. Well, I think you're doing the right thing is by diving into some personal development and just trying to find out who you are, because if you don't find out who you are and your values and all these things, you're just going to keep attracting the same women.
Yeah, and that's what the journey I'm on now is doing these retreats and things and
Yeah. Well,
doing some more.
before we get too far ahead, let's just back it up a bit and then we'll get back to this.
Yeah, I've jumped 7 years.
Yeah. So you're in the mines. When was the point in your life where you were like, fuck the mines, I want to start my own business? Is that
Pretty
how it
much.
went?
No, during the mining period, I've missed a couple of businesses that I had during the mines. So obviously, when the mines, I had even time roster and I had the financial income. I started because I got pretty heavily in the car flipping game. I was starting to flip sort of 50 to 70 cars a year whilst working. Then I thought, well, maybe that's my calling is to actually be a car dealer. So I went and got my car dealer's license on the side. And then I'd watch the auctions live on the laptop out in the bush when I was in the mine. So I'd buy vehicles and then I'd come back, clean and flip them before I'd go back. So this is the wild thing is at that time, again, I was doing some other stuff as well and flipping cars and making the mining income. So you're talking like at 27 years old, I was making some crazy money, you know what I mean?
So what
And
exactly were you doing to these cars to make money off them?
the cars didn't need too much. I just found a good way. Again, you got to remember, right? I started doing this shit when I was 12 with bikes. Then we went into motorbikes, boats. Then I went into cars when I was 18, 17. I had 5 cars by the time I was 17, I'd bought and sold. So the ability to watch the auction live on the feed and how auctions work is if you click the button, you buy. So because I had so much inventory for at this stage, you're talking 10, God, more years than 10, 12 years of inventory in my head, I could make quick decisions. I knew kilometers, year model, paintwork, all these things. I knew exactly
Hard
what
to tell
something
those
was.
things online though.
That's the risk. That's the risk. So again, auctions spook most people because you're buying sight unseen and you don't get to go there and go, oh, you know what, the fucking thing's shit. I don't want it. They don't like you click a button, you buy.
Yeah.
So at that point, the money profits were very exponential. They did very well for a long time. Then I moved into getting this car dealer's license because I had the time and the money to do it. And then also at that time, I started, that was 2012. The GFC happened and America's dollar actually went to shit and our dollar surpassed. So then I actually imported my first thing from America. And then that was something that actually led into how I know all these people in the States. I started an export business, bringing in big boys' toys from America, jet skis, boats, and Harleys. And that's how I started going to America, and that's how I ended up living in America for 6 months after I went through that breakup.
So how did that come about? What did you
sort of.
Was this, you obviously went in the mines then?
No, I was in the mines still when I was doing the importing business. I basically
What
came
made you stay in the mines? What reason?
secure income, because the auctions and things were hit and miss. You had good months and then you had months where it was hard to find a deal, and I didn't want to be desperate to buy things I didn't make money on. So I'd only buy things if they were $3,000 to $5,000 profit. That
Yeah.
was the margins that I was making on these things. So, but yeah, then I was starting to look at actually doing car dealing full time because I was getting so good at it. And then I did the license, but then I ended up shifting into the export business from America. And basically did a boat with a mate. We went halves in a $50,000 jet boat from Florida. We got that here. It took a long time to get through the process. It was about 3 months. A lot of risk, you know what I mean, sending that amount of money to the other side of the world, not knowing these people. But what it done is it gave us some contacts, and then I went out on my own. Then I said to the guy that we shipped through, I said, hey, I want to buy jet skis, Harleys, and I'm going to come to America. And do you know these contacts for that? And he gave me like a list of names, 3 names for Harleys, jet skis, and motorbikes or boats or whatever it was. And I pretty much flew over there with a heap of cash and also money on like a debit card that you could just like tap like 30, 40 grand at a time. I'd already transferred it into US dollars, and it's a crazy story. And then I flew over there. These people never knew I was coming. I didn't contact them. I was always a big believer in doing business face to face and looking someone in the eye and working out if they're trustworthy or they're someone I was going to do business with. So me, the crazy motherfucker I am, I'm like, I flew to LA with all this money and just 3 addresses and 3 phone numbers and 3 names, and I just hired a Mustang or something at the time, some convertible with my hot fucking girlfriend that I had, that dark-haired chick, and we just drove to these addresses and set meetings and would turn up and then be like, hey, I just flew in from Australia and I want this, this, and this, and went to a couple of the addresses and we sort of had business meetings. And then the last one was this guy called Jesse Kovac, and he was in the motorsports industry, and I kind of went to his building and turned up and didn't know this guy, didn't know I was coming or anything, and he actually happened to be the manager of this big motorsports store. I walk in, full Australian accent, like, hey, I'm looking for this guy called Jesse Kovac. The reception girl's like, oh yeah, he's the manager. I'll just call him over. This dude goes, hey, yeah, comes over. I'm Jesse Kovac. I said, hey, bro, I just flew here from Australia. I got $50,000 and I want to buy fucking 5 or 6 jet skis like right now off the floor. And he's like, what the fuck? I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious. I've got $10,000 in my pocket right now in US dollars, and I've got the rest on this card. And I need those jet skis right now, and I'm going to ship them back to Australia, and we're going to do this as a business. And he's like, you could imagine that conversation with someone like thinking, is this motherfucker for real? You know what I mean? But I knew by doing the business in that direction that these people would not fuck around and they'd believe me, and I'd get such amazing deals, because it's like you walk into somewhere with a fucking cash and no fucking bullshit and be like, I'm here right now. I got the money. I just flew here and I want all that. I knew that I was going to get a mad deal. Long story short, he didn't actually have the stock. We went out the back into his Corvette. He said, hey, I'm going to ring my opposition. I'm going to cut you a deal over there, but you got to give me commission on each jet ski. You got to flip me $400 a jet ski or something. So he rings his competitor, tells him this fucking crazy Aussie's here with all this money, and he's coming to your store in the next 30 minutes and he wants to buy 5 fucking jet skis in the crate. So I rock up there. The jet skis were $14,500 a piece US. I ended up getting them for $12,500. I got $2,000 off every jet ski. Times out by 5, that's $10,000 off just from me being there with the money, with the fucking card, ready to pay, do the deal. And the other thing was we could book in the shipping and everything while I was there. It was just done. Long story short, I have to go back, meet this Jesse Kovac, pay him the cash for each jet ski, pay him the deal, and he goes, you know what, bro, fucking you and your girl, come meet me and my wife at this restaurant. I'll give you an address. Come here and I'm going to take you to dinner. He books this fucking bougie ass restaurant up in Orange County, up on the hill overlooking the whole of LA. Yeah, well, this is a crazy story, you know what I mean? Like, so me and my chick go to this restaurant, meet this dude and his wife, hit it off, fucking, then they're like, come back to our place, you know, and let's hang out and shoot some pool and smoke some fucking weed, you know what I mean? I don't even smoke weed. So I go back to this dude's house, I'm fucking getting, you know, pissed as we're playing some, next thing we're sitting in his mad Corvette smoking weed. I'm high as fuck at this stage. We're like an hour from Hollywood where I was staying in my hotel. My chick had never driven on the wrong side of the roads, left-hand drive, Mustang, whatever. I'm like, fuck, I'm so high now, I can't drive back to Hollywood, you know what I mean? You're going to have to drive, chick, you know? I can't even see at this stage. Long story short, she somehow freaks out, works it out, gets us back to our hotel. Long story short, me and this dude end up doing a lot of business and we like became pretty much brothers. They're like, without being blood, we're like best mates. We talk every day still 12 years later. It gave me the ability to then tap into this huge network of American people because he's like even better at networking than I am. He's like me, but on fucking steroids with networking and connecting. And he just knows every motherfucker. You need anything, this guy knows the person and knows.
Do you see this podcast being done over Skype? Connection has been lost and a small part of the conversation was cut out.
Yeah. So this dude, obviously from 2012 when I met him, and then we started hustling and doing business, and I was shipping Harleys, boats, and dirt bikes. And at that stage, again, this is when fed the ego bullshit. Like at my house, I had fucking a jet boat, a Harley, a jet ski, a motorbike. I had a 300C on 24s out the front. And I'm fucking 27 years old, you know, and just living like fucking God, making the mining money, flipping this shit, making $5,000 an item, flying between America and fucking Australia, you know, just living like
so what was the point of it? Is that are the prices of their things a lot cheaper and then you bring them here? Is that?
Yeah. So put it into perspective, at the time, the top of the range Cedar was about $23,000 Australian. The American dollar went beyond, like went for the first time in the history of the money, American dollar went to 106 Australian. So when I'm buying these jet skis at 12.5 USD, I had a fucking $10,000 margin to then ship, trailer, rego.
Why are they so cheap in America? Because they make so much more of them.
Because Australia's a ripoff. We're on an island, and it's like, well, if you want a jet ski, it's 23,000. Who else are you going to go buy it off?
Yeah, we're so far away from everybody else.
So Harleys were the same. Harleys were 25,000 here, and I could get them for 13,000 there with no, well, they call it miles there, but no mileage. Again, I had like $10,000 windows by the time I shipped them, converted them, did all the bullshit. So it was just crazy margins, you know what I mean? And crazy window of opportunity. And yeah, it was just at the time, like I was targeting the market, like looking back on it, I was about, you know, really going to ramp it up and target the miners and basically go to like the mining, like target the miners and go, hey, get all their deposits, which the 50% deposit would have paid for it. You know what I mean? So I was going to call it Big Boys Toys Australia. I had girls lined up. I was going to fly up to Gladstone, have them there as they all come off the boats, and the girls were going to give out flyers. Back then, there was no Facebook and shit. You know what I mean? It wasn't, well, there was, but it wasn't like Facebook ads weren't even a thing. So I was more thinking laterally of targeting the guys with expandable cash. And it went on for a while, but then the dollar started to shift pretty rapidly back the other way, and it just destroyed the business because all the margins went fucking disappeared, you know?
Yeah, so how long did that last?
It lasted for about 3 years, I think it was, from memory, before
That's
the dollar started.
A nice little honey hole, though.
Yeah, bro, it was, if I could have continued that path and the dollar stayed even at 90 cents, like, that would have been my destiny. Was because, fuck, man, like, who wouldn't want to fly to LA, hang with 6 people, roll around and just buy shit and fill them in containers and like hang out with all these badass Americans that have all these cool toys, and then ship shit back, come home, and then use it while you got it here, and then
Yeah.
you know.
So you rubbing shoulders with some pretty wealthy people over there?
Yeah. So I built very strong relationships with people with money, and they respected me because I was a no bullshit guy. From how I originally got entered into the group was from Jesse, who trusted me, and we did a lot of business and became so trusting in the money we were sending each other that then I was coming out for 6 weeks at a time. Every single year I was there for 6 weeks. So then I started building these relationships with his relationships upon relationships with people, which then progressed into having the ability to, like recently I hadn't been there because of COVID. I was able to go back there, and you know, you've got these people that their hospitality is just incredible. They treat you so well. They take you to all these amazing places, and you know, and they've obviously just got a crazier lifestyle than us. So their cars and their toys and their houses are just ridiculous, you know.
Have you got any cool stories from your times doing that you can tell?
There's a lot of cool stories, hiring Harleys and going into the desert, you know, hiring fucking muscle cars and doing burnouts through Compton, and, you know, shooting fucking machine guns, going on power boats, helicopters. Yeah, like crazy stories.
Yeah, well, give us an example of one. Tell us one.
Well, we'll give you a funny story to start with. So we're in the Vegas one time in Bellagio, and some of the boys were in a suite, and they wanted to get some fucking coke, and they one of the boys go downstairs. He's blind drunk, and he gets this shit off one of the bellboys, dressed as a full bellboy. Comes upstairs. We're in this ball and suite overlooking. I don't know if you know much about Vegas, but there's the big fountain and shit in front of the Bellagio. You know, we're in this suite. One of the boys comes up, and he brings this like bag. It looks like a rock. You know what I mean? We're like, fuck yeah, man, you've done well here. I pull it out of the bag. I start unraveling this thing, and it was just tissue. It was toilet paper. So this dude had basically grabbed toilet paper and just compressed it till it looked like a solid rock of rack. And I've like unraveled this thing, and it's just fucking tissue, man. You know what I mean? It's
nothing
like,
in there.
Nothing in there. Straight A grade hustle, man. Like as hustle as yeah. So then my mate goes flying down there blind, trying to attack everyone. It's like the dude didn't even work there. He fucking that's the con. He dresses as the bellboy, says he can get good shit, goes from hotel to hotel hustling the dumb Aussie. So yeah, there's that.
How much did he get robbed?
Yeah, no, for sure.
How much did he get robbed?
Oh, balls over there are cheap, 180 or something US, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy, you know. But yeah, there's a couple of stories with the boys. We went to fucking out into the desert one time. One of the boys had a Range Rover, I had a Mercedes. Flying through the desert like crazy people, and typical Aussies, as soon as they land in Cali, they go get a weed card and buy as much fucking dope as they can get. My mate's driving a Range Rover stacked with all the boys, fucking running down to Palm Springs. And we missed a turn, and then next minute, like, he went down a different street, and then I come around the corner, and he was so stoned, he like literally put his Range Rover in reverse and fucking went straight up over this car because he was so high, ripped the whole fucking like front left-hand panels and things off this thing. And all I could think is like, man, his car had that much fucking drugs in it. And I'm like, you're fucked. Like the cops are going to be here. Like they're not going to fuck around when, you know, American police don't fuck around. So here's me like getting all the dope, running into the motel and pulling picture frames off walls and hiding shit like all through the hotel trying. Because I'm thinking in Australia, it's like first thing they do, search the car, test you for drugs. All right, where are you staying? Fucking when they find drugs. And you know what I mean? All that process goes through your head. So there was that time, like fucking where that happened with him. And then we had another time where we were in Hollywood. Fuck, man, the stories could go forever. Like, so there was this club in Hollywood, and it was an invite-only place where all the famous people hang out. You can't get in there unless your name's on the door, and it's $1,000 US a head just to get in. Again, because I had the connections, fucking got put name on the door, paid $1,000 a head to get into this joint. And it's like where all the rappers and stuff hang out. And basically walked in, and 2 Chainz was there fucking in his booth and just like had a mic. So the whole club was booths, like it's all booths. And these people were spending like 50 grand on a Monday night, like just hanging out in these booths. So then like paparazzi are out the front, and that was a crazy night. We ended up fucking in a big fight because one of the boys was like getting sucked off by some American chick in the toilet, and then she had a boyfriend in the club, and then we're nearly like in this huge fight, and it's like, so we've had that. Like, yeah, we've had the stories.
So you met 2 Chainz that night?
Yeah. So
what was he like?
Yeah, well, he's just a fucking rapper, right? They just are high as fuck most of the time. They wear sunnies and they just smoke heaps of weed, and because they can smoke in the club there, smoke weed in the club. So they're just high as fuck, right? Every time I went to America, I always hired like a badass car, like, again, because I was lucky enough I had the finances. I've hired like mad S550s, fucking Corvette, Mustang, Harleys, you know, gone and obviously had a good time with the American women back then. Were pretty easy to have fun with the old A mate accent, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just love the tourists.
I've had a lot of fun with a lot of beautiful women in America.
Have you met anyone else famous?
Fuck, who else famous have I met over there? I wouldn't, like, obviously I met a lot of famous people, but their names wouldn't be like to anyone. But because of the network I was in, my friends owned one of the biggest clubs down in Orange County, so it was called Sutra. And again, you know, I'm like this dude, and because I had the connection through Jesse, I would go to these places and the lineup's like 200 meters long. Like, I don't even fucking live in these places, and I'd just be able to walk past the whole line, get pulled in VIP, and then I'm up behind the fucking booth with the DJ, like with bottle service, drinking straight out of vodka bottles. And, you know, like, I've just always had this crazy ability to connect with high level people that then like me, and I'm in just always these more different situations than the average person wherever I sort of go in the world.
It's crazy getting yourself into all these situations. What are you thinking? What's your mindset like while you're doing all this shit? Are you just feeling like you're on top of the world?
Yeah, you just kind of like, this is fucking life. I'm living hard, you know. I'm in these amazing places. I'm with these cool people, and I'm doing experiences that no one really experiences. And I've done that all around the world, literally in every single place I've been. Because the same with Canada, my friends know some famous DJs there called the Funk Hunters. So again, I've been to some parties there, like where I went to New Year's, and we're with these famous DJs and fucking eating heaps of MDMA, and then we're backstage fucking with all these famous artists in Canada, again with the DJs behind the fucking decks. You know, these places are packed out with 5,000 people, and I'm a tourist, and I'm hanging out with these balling people again, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of experiences like that always seem to happen, that I end up in more higher level situations, I suppose.
Yeah. So now that you've done all of that, what happened after the export business?
So then that's when obviously then me and her, the relationship shit started to happen pretty heavily, and then the baby thing happened. We broke up. I sold the house. I then decided not to work for 2 years. Well, I didn't set a time. I just was so fucked up mentally and emotionally that I was like.
Does that kid know what happened?
He was so young that I'm not sure if she's ever told him the story now. I've never asked her that. I'm not sure if she ever brought it up and said that had happened. He was a baby, so he'd never remember, right?
Yeah.
But so then after that, I didn't work for 2 years, and I traveled the world. I went to Canada for 6 weeks at a time. I lived in America for 6 months. I lived with Jesse because I was trying to then set up something in the States, right? I've always sort of been torn to try and set up something in another country because I sort of feel more comfortable overseas than I do here, just with the opportunities.
Do you still feel like that now? You still have
I definitely
some goals to do that?
Yeah, I definitely want to be able to cut deals anywhere in the world and go and live in locations for 3 months at a time and interact with different cultures and people, you know, through business. So that's where the traditional route of business I took, which I fell into by chance, it has allowed that to a degree now, because I worked very hard to make it, obviously, as you know, remotely done with the way I advertise and operate.
Yeah. There's something about meeting and speaking to people overseas that it's just different. Like, it's just so cool to listen to other people's ways of lives and other people's ways of thinking. And
it's probably really what's helped me do so well in life and business is because my parents took me there at 14, and then I got to taste that. I got to realize that where we are right now, like where you are and I am right now, we're a tiny, tiny speck of nothing. Like, Australia's a goldfish bowl and everyone's bumping into the walls here. They think that this is it. We're so far behind on so many things, culturally, technology, how other people think and operate, that by doing so much business overseas and traveling, and that has always gave me the lateral thinking, so much wider peripheral vision than the standard person, because I interact with so many humans for so long, and I've seen so many different cultures, and I've seen the hustle and how people really fucking hustle, because I've been to places where if you don't hustle that hard, you don't eat, right? There's no government handout, there's no support, so you can get so much from those humans on hunger and hunger for success. And it's probably what's helped me do so well in my business, is I understand, watching my American friends, because they've got so many people competing against their business, that the way you do customer service and the way you show up as a business with your branding and who you are is crucial on how you're going to be represented and how quick you're going to grow and how long you're going to survive.
Yeah. What do you think is probably one of the biggest things that you've learned from those guys? And I just also wanted to say, like, the way that you've just gone overseas and done a lot of this stuff, just like with a girl, not without friends, like, I really admire that, for you to put yourself out there and like interact with these people and just learn from them and just be confident around them, because that's something I've sort of like struggled with a little bit. I've sort of always had to do something with friends and stuff. I've never really gone out and done my own thing until like sort of recently. So I just wanted to say I really admire that, and
I appreciate that, bro. It
inspires me.
It's a powerful way, because you're forced to then go with the mate. It's pretty easy to just go to the bar and talk to your mate.
Yeah.
But the best things always happen on the other side of discomfort. And again, that's why I love traveling. Like, fuck, I've literally got friends all around the planet. On every spot I've ever been, I've connected with someone. And then on that journey, I always connect. And then some of those connections stick, and I love that person, they love me. And then, fuck, because of the power of the internet, we communicate still forever and a day, and we're friends or family, you know what I mean? And that come from traveling on my own, being an extrovert and being able to just be charismatic with people. And I'm not being fake, I'm just being real, right? And I think that's probably what's helped me a lot in my life, is my core values are honesty, loyalty, respect. And if someone shows me that, like, I'll give them wholeheartedly, and those attributes are hard to find in a human.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, what do you think were probably the biggest things you learned of those guys you were in America with, or even just any like high value man that you've met?
I've learned how much you've got to show up with integrity, and you've got to have grit and resilience, and that there's going to be ups and downs, and it's how quickly you can come back out of that valley, because it's always going to be ups and downs, and it's not always high. And even what's happened in my own life, I've been on such ecstatic fucking highs to the lowest of lows, you know what I mean? To like, fuck, finding out a kid isn't mine, having someone then try and take my fucking house, having these women do all this fucked up shit to me emotionally. It's kind of building that resilience and building the tools to get past that,
Yeah, surely you've got to know now that no matter what happens to you in your life, whether you lose it all now, that you could surely get it all back.
Yeah, and that's what most success stories are, because obviously not many people have that success, trials and tribulations, because they might have done something small in their life. But people that have really made some big moves and put their dick on the line and put their, you know, these are huge moves, you know, in business and relationships and things. And that's where you hear those stories of really, really wealthy men. They've been bankrupt like 3 or 4 times. They've lost it all how many times and started again because they've built resilience to that and the ability to know that everything will always work out again in the long run. And you've just got to fucking be have perseverance, you know, to that outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning a lot, man. But
Well, the simple analogy is like when it's a storm, you know, and it's like the world's gonna fucking end and it's raining and it's storming and we're all like gloomy and it's shit, that someday like the sun will come again. Someday we'll walk outside and you'll hear the birds chirping and the sun will hit your face and you feel like a different person. And it's a lot about emotional trauma. Is the same as when you're in the dark clouds, you can't see anything but negative. You can't be positive. Everything's negative, you know, but then this is where it comes down to daily gratitudes. There's still something in your life that somebody else would look at and they would fucking kill for that. Like, because us Western people are so programmed to be fucking white that are always looking at what we don't have instead of what we do have. Yet there's people that live on the street and would look at what you do have and be like, I would fucking give anything to have even a fraction of what you've got right now.
yeah, I was literally listening to a Joe Rogan podcast before I started talking to you, and you should listen to it. I can't remember. I'll text you what it is after this, but it's about the people in the Congo, and it's about something they get. It's like a certain thing that they have in our batteries, in our phone batteries, in the electric cars, everything. And to get that, this is literally at the bottom of the food chain to make our phones work pretty much. That these guys only get like $1 a day and they're working in like poisonous atmosphere. So they're like breathing in all this fucked up shit. And yeah, they're only getting like $1 a day. They're working, they got their kids working, like just absolute ridiculous things, and nobody knows this is happening. And like after hearing it, I'm like, I can't believe this shit is happening. So literally the phones that we're using right now, there's people like full blood diamond shit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that shit's going on.
Is that in the Congo?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of my mates told me about that. It's crazy that still goes on, eh?
Yeah, and literally right now, and it's pretty much about they were saying about slavery, like the most slavery that's ever been in mankind is happening right now, for that reason, for us to use our phones and for our electric cars.
Oh, Westerners, man.
Yeah, and then we're just over here worrying about fucking the most basic shit ever.
Yep. You know.
But I definitely resonate with like every time something really bad's happened in my life and I've been like sort of down, something great has come from it. Like I wouldn't even expect it. It's just like I've been down, something really fucked up's happened, and then boom, out of nowhere, something amazing has happened. So yeah, it's just pretty much got to keep your head up and just keep hustling.
It's all a part of the growth as a man, you know. It's because the older you get, the more that life's going to bring you. You're going to have death and loss through people that are close to you. You're going to have health shit happens, you know, like real challenges start because it only gets harder as a man, especially when you start having a family and a wife and kids. Like that's some serious pressure, you know. That's a whole nother fucking kettle of fish.
Yeah, and I don't even think I'm ready for that shit yet. I got a lot of things to do first, a lot of inner work to do as well.
There's nothing wrong with that, bro. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like me. I've never written down what my values are for a woman and what my non-negotiables are, and I do that. I sort of add to that list every day now, and same with health and business, and I'm actually writing that down, and then I read it at night before I go to bed. So I'm law of attraction. I'm programming my mind to program exactly what's going to come into my life now.
Yeah, it's a great way to do that. I've been told to do that as well, and not only write it down once you've met somebody, to actually speak to them and communicate to them about what you want, what they want, and what are non-negotiables, what are negotiables. Because if you don't speak about that, resent each other for silly little things just because you didn't communicate.
Well, it's just like I'm listening to 50 Cent's Hustle Smarter, Hustle Harder, and he was talking about marriage, and it is like it's a contractual agreement, it's a business agreement, and you need to treat it like that, especially as you get older, you know. And a lot of us just look at it wish-washy, but it's the biggest decision you'll ever make, because your life partner is either going to bring you down or bring you up. And exactly two takeaways I got from him was what his non-negotiables are as a woman, because he's obviously so wealthy.
He's such a beast.
His is basically that she needs to be financially independent and emotionally independent, meaning she doesn't need him for his money and she doesn't need him for emotional dependency, which is the two things in my own world, and I'm sure a lot of women lean hard financially on a man and hard emotionally, and they're the two things that, in reverse, if the woman came in and she didn't need him for those purposes and she came in purely just from love and connection, like, she could offer so much more. And that's something for me, like, looking at my last situation, she offered me no financial support and emotionally was unstable and was needy and needs to be with a man. She can't be on her own. She's not independent whatsoever. And in the end, it costs you dearly because they lean on you emotionally, which tires you out. And then the financial situation eventually tires you out. They're two critical areas.
Yeah, that's why they say to women, like, well, for a man, you can't just be good looking and get away with things. But if you're a woman, you can sort of just be. If you're extremely good looking, you're 5 steps ahead of everyone in life. And especially
100%.
like for you, if you're doing the right thing at the moment and you've had you've learned the hard way pretty much, but right now you're doing the right things, and I bet you that I know the next girl that you get I reckon she's gonna be the one.
For sure, man. And the reason it'll be the one is because I've gone through such a journey to get to her too, you know, and I've grown and developed so much, and I've had to shed so much of my old self to then when I meet this incredible woman. Like, at the end of the day, if you want true, like, a fucking boss bitch that's going to mother your children and do life with you, that takes a bit to find that, man. You know what I mean? And I have sort of, like, that original girlfriend, I definitely found that in her, but it was just timing was wrong. But since then, I haven't found that, you know, and it's because I haven't been ready for that. And I truly believe what I've gone through again is to, not even only in women, but in business, rebirth me to be like, hey, motherfucker, like, you're not living even close to your full potential, because now you've heard my story. Like, I'm not the normal cunt. There's something different about me, you know what I mean? To be doing those things I was doing in business as a fucking kid to right through to where I am now, that's not normal behavior. And I've actually been limiting myself for a long time to really do some real fucking business, you know, like the fact I've got these stories of making all this money and exporting and importing, and, like, you know what I mean? It's just a crazy story to them where I am now, and I've got this big electrical company now, and it's just a wild story, but it's all leading into, you're never going to be an end game. So I'm only 37. I'm going to continue to go right into my older life, but it's leading me into fucking some serious business decisions, business movements, and obviously then having a woman that's going to be strong enough to handle that and support me, because that's what I need. I need a woman that's like my strongest pillar in that is my backbone, you know what I mean? That helps me focus and progress and supports me through those tough times.
Yeah, and you can't have someone that is just taking everything that you've worked for, right, pretty much. Like, if you've worked all this time and then you're just providing for her and she's bringing nothing to the table, then yeah, it's just going backwards.
And that's where at the time, like, I should have pulled rank, and I sort of tried to a few times, and, you know, typical woman that is immature in their emotions would just crack on and say crazy shit and call the cops on this, that, like, just total red flag stuff, you know. And like with her, I built her up, I built her a business, I helped her with her child, and I thought, hey, by me helping her is going to help me in the long run, because then get her financially independent will then make us as a team financially independent. But all it did was backfired on me and gave her the ability to then, when I did break up with her, that she could look after herself from what I created.
Yeah. I'm just saying, and think of, you should be proud as fuck as well, dude, because look at what you've done, and you've had people sucking on your tit or dragging you down a little bit. Imagine how good you'll do once you've got someone that's working with you and helping you and pushing you forward and doing all these things. Like, it's just crazy to even think of, huh?
Yeah, no, and that's exciting. I appreciate that now from my story, you've seen that hole in the story, you know what I mean? That I've been restricted constantly, because when these things happen, they do emotionally, financially, they do set you back. Like, obviously what happened this time, you know, I lived in that incredible place on the water canals, and I ended up back at my fucking parents again, you know, like, that's, again, my ego got fucking destroyed, like, and I had to reflect and be like, how the fuck did this happen again, you know, like, but
Yeah.
the world works in funny ways, and obviously I'm coming out the back end of it now and seeing that there's going to be an opportunity from that, because again, I'm growing, I'm developing, I'm, you know, like, I'm not doing like what girls do and jump straight back into a relationship. I'm doing the work, you know, going to these retreats, doing these podcasts with you, like, doing the things to make me better.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can clearly tell just from an outsider looking in, like, no detriment to you at all, but I can see that this has severely, like, hurt you and damaged you, because I can tell just by the way that you talk. When you talk about it, it's very emotional for you.
For sure.
So, but you just need to talk. I'm glad you're talking about it though, because I'm sure it helps.
Yeah, no, and a lot of friends have said I probably should get, you know, chat to someone about it, because it definitely, I had underlying trauma from what happened with the kid, and like when I was 28, and for this to happen again, it's like, it's really brought up some shit that I thought I'd got past, and the problem I have now is time's gotten away from me, right? I'm not 28 anymore, I'm 37, and that's what hurts the most, is I'm turning 40 in like fucking 24 months. And again, I'm like, I did not see this. Like, I should have been, I was supposed, you know, in my head, I set the goals 10 million, worth 10 mil, married with a couple of kids. Like, but then you reflect on that and go, well, whose story is that? Is that the Western world story or my story? Supposed to have this at this age, supposed to have that. Like, instead of, I'm sitting here telling you the story of my life, and I've lived really more lifetimes than anyone, you know, in
and you can't, everyone's got to go through their own journey, their own path at different things. That's all the same as me. Like, I've even got to 30 and I've been like, fuck, is this all I've got? Is this like this? But I've lived a completely different life, and like, I'm actually happy with where I am now, because I know that even though all that stuff that I used to do, that's past me, and now I have a clear path of where I want to be and what I want to do. And yeah, now I can have those actual 10-year plans, and I know even if they don't come to fruition, I know that I'm on the path and they will eventually come.
Yeah.
And the same, it's going to happen for you as well, man. And like, you can't complain, man. You fucking done some cool shit and had some plenty of money.
Yeah, no, and that's where you have sometimes a regret out of the immaturity of what I did with the money, because I've had millions and millions of dollars already, to be honest. Like, as you can hear from the stories of the money I was turning, but do you replace money and being secure right now with 20 years of just some of these, a little fraction of my stories of events that have happened while traveling and living crazy life? What's life for? You're only here once. You can't take the money with you, you know. So sometimes I'm like, yeah, now I'm a bit older, you sort of have that little bit of regret, but at the same time, and that's why I did it at those younger ages. I'm like, man, who the fuck wouldn't want to be like driving around in these fat cars and snowboarding the most epic locations, and then when I'm on the hill, I'm not staying in a backpackers. I'm staying with a fucking hot tub on my deck, looking in the snow, and like sleeping in a comfy bed. And I don't know, like, and every time I traveled, I didn't stay in shitholes. I always ate at the finest restaurants, and I don't know. That was kind of that's what I wanted to do at the time. Obviously now it's not as about that, because now I'm more smart with my money, and I try and invest every extra dollar I have into something that's going to bring me passive income that eventually I can live that life with other people paying me,
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, like you said, that's what you wanted to do at that time. And what I was doing, that's what I wanted to do. And now we're doing what we want to do now, which is the way that we want to do it. So it's good to sit back and reflect on all of the things. And if those things didn't happen, we wouldn't be the person we were today. Imagine still being completely immature, but in 5 years' time, you'd be mad.
For sure, and that's where I've got the next couple of years to really dial things in. And the crazy thing is when you've focused on where you want to go and what you want, like, I truly believe in 2 years' time, I'm going to sit and I'm going to have everything that I want. And that's with my partner and with business. And I'm going to achieve that, because now I've been able to cut out this toxic energy that I was carrying with this last partner, and I'm getting close to letting go of that situation. I'm obviously probably still need to go through some stuff, and completely let go of that. But obviously my first stage with that is like how now I've got my own place again back on the coast. That's been a big part of me getting my ego and my independence back as a fucking man. You know what I mean? Getting my own crib back, like, and that just took some time to work that out.
Yeah, well, would you be interested in doing like a part 2? Because now I think about it, we haven't even got into you starting your businesses.
No, we've pretty much got my whole 30s to go through.
Yeah, so like, if you'd be happy to, we could do like another 2 hours or whatever, another point, and we can just chop it here.
Part 2, and then lead into what happened after the breakup, which then I didn't work for 2 years, and some of those travel stories, which then led to how I started the electrical business. And then, because the business in itself is a great chat on trials and tribulations and money and hiring and firing and things.
I don't want to get into it right now when we're already 2 hours in. Like, I'd rather be fresh. Like, my back's sweating like a pig right now. If you're happy to do it whenever you're free next, we'll chop this here, and then we'll do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 if it keeps going.